All right, 6-month review of the Hoyt RX9 and the RX9 Ultra. You're more of an Ultra type guy. I like the shorter axle to axle. Both pretty good improvements over last year's RX8, in my opinion. A lot of differences, but main thing being speed for me specifically.
Yeah.
Being a shorter draw length, 27-inch draw length, I kind of like to look at that kinetic energy. And I will say that this bow over the RX8 is about 6 feet per second upgrade for me.
Right.
I've loved it so far.
Yeah, I have too. They did a lot of work with the Ultra this year. Typically the Ultra's been about 10 feet a second slower per se, and they picked all that back up. Now this bow's about as fast as that bow. Both of these are, you know, between 340 to 345 IBO. So both of them are fast, but you know, typically your longer axle to axle stuff has been slower, and Hoyt really worked that out this year and put the speed back in the Ultra. And it's firing as fast as your shorter axle to axle RX9. So, you know, that's definitely a plus for this year.
So why do you gravitate towards the Ultra versus the standard?
Well, you got to look at it from several different aspects. One of them being draw length. The longer draw length people need to gravitate towards an Ultra. But that goes against me because I'm a 28-inch draw. But I like the longer axle-to-axle platform. It's a little bit more forgiving, and it points and holds a little bit more truer to me. Plus, one of the reasons you want that longer axle-to-axle with a long draw length is with a longer draw length, when you draw the bow back, you know, if you got a short axle-to-axle bow, the apex of that string is really pinching down. And with a longer axle-to-axle bow, it kind of opens that apex up so you don't get as much pinch around the back of the knock area when you're at full draw. So that makes it a little more forgiving and a little better shooting. But to me, they just point and hold a little bit more steady for me. And I shot a good many tournaments years ago, so you know, all your tournament bows are longer axle to axle because they're a little bit more forgiving, and so it just kind of stuck with me going over into the hunting world. I prefer and feel a little bit more comfortable with a longer axle to axle bow. But that bow right there, your shorter axle to axle stuff, is going to outsell your longer axle to axle stuff, because a lot of people in your hunting scenarios want something smaller and compact if they're in a blind, if they're in a tree stand or whatever. So the shorter axle to axle stuff is a little bit more popular, especially for deer hunting. But I've never really had a problem. You know, I've hunted in blinds and every scenario possible and hadn't really run into too much of an issue, because when you talk about it, you're not talking but about, you know, a little bit over an inch on either side. It's not a make or break situation.
Yeah, and I've always gravitated towards the shorter bows. Like I said earlier, I'm very aware of the speed and kinetic energy that I'm losing being a shorter draw length. And with the shorter axle to axle bows always having a little bit more speed, that's kind of what I look for. And doing that without sacrificing too much accuracy. You know, this, I will say that it seems like ever since like the VTM, I've noticed that if I pull a shot and I feel like I was left, it's usually always my arrow's left. If I feel like I missed high, it's always high. So I felt like that I was always hitting right behind my pin. Yeah. And that's something I noticed, like I said, in the VTM models and all through these models. It's like when you know where you miss, that's when you really know it's dialed in. Yeah. And so obviously some of the differences, we got a shorter limb on these bows versus the RX8. You got different cams. So with these cams, you get, instead of, I believe it was at 2.5 inches of draw length adjustment, or was it 2 inches?
Yeah, it was right there around 2. So because they went to 1/4 inch increments.
Yeah, so with these, you got a 3/4 inch adjustment, which gives you more performance at each draw length, basically.
Your bow's going to function the best its ability on the longest draw setting possible. That's when you're going to get the most, the most out of the cam itself.
So, and basically what that does is give you more long draw settings with each cam. So
correct.
So in this particular cam, I don't know exactly which number it is, but I have the adjustability from 26 and a quarter to 27.
Right.
I shoot a 27-inch draw length, so it gives me the most performance being at the longest draw length setting.
Yeah, and it's the same with mine. On the Ultra side, me at 28 inches of draw is on the longest setting for that module. So, it's not always going to line up and work for you. Your draw length's your draw length, and you don't want to change it for the fact to be on that longest setting, because we're talking really, as far as function goes, we cannot probably shoot the difference.
Right. We're talking about splitting hairs.
We're talking splitting hairs, but the factories will tell you the bow's going to function at its best ability, maxed out, and at the longest draw setting. So, in the past, they've offered different cams or different modules. So, I was always on the lucky side because I could shoot 2 cams back in the old day because 28 overlapped.
Yeah.
So I could shoot the number 2 or the number 3 cam in the old days. But you only had that option with the Ultra if you were a 28-inch draw.
And now, if you're at the bottom of that draw length scale, you're only 3/4 instead of, let's say, 2 inches at the bottom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's why, it's kind of a double-edged sword because you want a lot of versatility with a bow, I guess, in case you ever sell it or whatever. But they function better when you don't have all that, versatility and adjustability in it. In fact, your youth bows, that go from like, let's say 18 inches of draw all the way to 30, you'll notice how, the back wall isn't solid, it's not as fast and as efficient and all that kind of stuff. So it's a give and take relationship, as far as dealing with that kind of stuff.
Are you an extra hard or hard back wall setting?
I like the hardest back wall I can find.
Yeah. I started last year on the RX8 with the hard setting, and then I went to the extra hard, and I never looked back. It just, that firm back wall, man, once you get that, because if you get too spongy of a back wall, which the hard is not, I wouldn't call it spongy, but you know how it feels when your bow's like almost out of time a little bit?
Right. Oh, yeah.
That extra hard, it just takes all the bad feeling out of it.
Correct.
If that makes sense.
Correct. When Hoyt used to have the round draw stops on there, they were a little bit spongy because they had the rubber tubing kind of around it, so you would get a little sponge. I always put the aftermarket Bowmar stops on there, which were more like what they've got on here now. It was a flat, deal that covered more surface area of the string. So when you drew back against it, it was like hitting that brick wall, which is what I like. I like a really solid back wall. It helps a lot with executing back tension. And it's just, to me, it's more of a crisp shot.
Have you shot through the chronograph?
Yes, I have. I picked up right at 10 feet a second over my RX8.
That's crazy.
Because I crunched all the numbers, from last year, and I actually pulled my paperwork out from last year with my RX8 and was comparing it to this RX9 when I broke everything down. And I've got a short draw length too, so speed's really important to me. I kind of like to stay between the 270 to 290 mark, and that's what I build my arrows around. So, I was at 270, right around the lower end of what I like to be with the RX8.
With how heavy of an arrow?
Mine's right at about 475 total weight. And when I went to the RX9 Ultra this year, I picked up, I think it was actually right at 11 feet a second. Is what I picked up. But they put a lot of research into the Ultra this year to try to get that speed back up, because that was always something you lost with your longer axle stuff, was that speed. And, in the hunting scenario with people shooting heavier arrows, you want to, kind of keep that speed up as much as you can. So it really benefited me this year to pick the speed up with the Ultra.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of run through my setup real quick. This year I'm kind of testing out the Hamsky, limb driven, lot more adjustability as far as that launcher going down.
Yeah.
So you can kind of customize if you want that launcher to kind of drop right before the arrow, comes through. So there's some adjustability there. I really haven't been able to stretch it out and see if I can tell any difference so far. 30, which I guess me and Rigsby, we shot at 70. So it performed good. So I'm testing that. I've always kind of liked running the Raptor Peep ever since they came out. And then if you notice something on here, a little custom, there's a rumor going around. We may have a dialed archery small batch coming out in Realtree original. So y'all kind of be on the lookout for that. So one of the coolest new sights to kind of hit the industry. Obviously, it's very recognizable for the little hole that they got here through the wheel. But overall, I like it, man. I've just been a big Hoyt fan all my life. I'm running a 12-inch and a 10-inch right now off the back. I'll probably end up switching this to a 9 just to give me a little bit more room here when I'm kind of maneuvering around in the tree stand. But
yeah.
I don't know. That's my setup. Different yoke system this year. A lot of people kind of ran into where you started shimming your cams over to one side, you'd have a little bit of cable rubbing. So we've kind of gotten away from that with the new yoke system. A little bit more stability. It doesn't seem like we're having to shim the cams over quite as much on these as we had in some of the previous models.
No, yeah, most of the time you can do it with the stock shims that are there. You can reverse them, and you can do a lot of tunability through there. They do offer, the black and the red shims. If you have to do a little bit more than what is stock, you can get some of those and shim a little bit more if you need to. But most of the time, I would say 90% of the bows you don't have to get into that with. What comes stock with it is plenty good enough. But my setup this year is pretty much running the same as last year. I run the integrated QAD rest by Hoyt. I'm running the Spot Hog Fast Eddy. It's just been an old, true, durable sight throughout the years. I've really enjoyed it. Running Hoyt stabilizers. I've got the 6-inch off the front and the 8-inch is my sidebar. And the Hoyts come actually with a shorter stabilizer right here, and you're totally fine to just shoot that because that short stabilizer in this bottom hole right here will function like a regular 6-inch stabilizer run out of the hole everybody, has run them out of previous. That was one good thing about putting the stabilizer, down here where it's further out was, that short stabilizer functions just like a 6-inch out of here, which I've always shot, kind of 6-inch stabilizers. I like to say kind of compact in that just so it's not grabbing on limbs and everything. But I've kind of gone a little different the past 2 years and run a 6-inch out of the bottom, 8-inch, sidebar, and it balances the bow out really, really good. So, simple but very, very functional setup.
Yeah, I mean, I've been super happy overall with this setup. I think this bow, I've kind of decided with a 27-inch draw length, I've jumped up to 80 pounds, and I think with a 400, I'd have to go back and look for sure, but with a 450 grain arrow, I'm shooting in the 290s with a 27-inch draw length. So that's up my kinetic energy a good bit. And then with the upgraded cams, another 5-6 feet per second without sacrificing really any accuracy. And, I think when people talk about a more aggressive cam, you start getting into a little bit more harsh of a draw. I didn't notice really any difference between the RX8 and this bow really at all. It's felt very similar.
Yeah, the only thing I notice is loaded a little bit heavier on the front, but it stays smooth, consistent. Is where the RX8 used to build a little bit as it went. The load on this one is right off the bat in the front of the draw. And but it's very smooth and consistent to be able to get that speed and have that smooth a draw. that smooth of cam system is really saying something. They've really got smooth draws, and they got the hard back wall. You know, everything just sets up really nice.
Well, I'm ready to get after them, man. I'm ready to start
No doubt.
shooting. I'm ready to get close to deer season, figure out what deer we got where, start running a few more cameras and start shooting more. So
it's hard to believe it's already come back around to deer season.
We're dang near almost a month out.
I know it.
From when the time this video was shot. So
it's coming quickly.
Yeah. But that's it, man. That's the 6 month review. That's my 2 cents on the new Hoyt, on the RX9. You like the RX9 Ultra, so that's some of the differences, some of the pros and cons of longer axle to axle versus shorter. So hopefully that'll give you a little insight, especially if you're shopping for a new bow this year. Maybe that's some of the options you can take into consideration. So,
and if y'all got any questions, drop some questions in the comment about our setups. We'll be glad to answer them or whatever.
Catch y'all on the next one.